So our final step in all this process, we're finally wrapping up here, is how do we put all this information into practice for each of us individually? Now, like I mentioned in the beginning, we're going to be talking very specifically to college students and how college students can eat well and improve their health throughout these next 4 years or however much they have left, maybe on a lower income or utilizing like campus dining plans. Okay. Or if they say live on their own or in an apartment and are responsible for their own grocery shopping, what are the less expensive options that are available to them where they can still consume an adequate and healthy diet? Okay. First, we're going to talk about meal planning. I think meal planning is a really, really great tool that you can use in order to make sure you're consuming the foods that you want to be consuming and not risk straying from your plan. Now, again, not that straying from your plan is necessarily a bad thing. Okay, if you have a meal plan, you've prepped all your foods, and then a bunch of your buddies say, "Hey, you want to go get half price apps at Applebee's tonight? You want to come with us?" Like, there's not necessarily anything wrong with saying no to that, but still having some sort of plan is going to keep you from making poor decisions every single night of the week. Like, what should I eat tonight? I don't know. How about McDonald's? It's close by. Or let's go get pizza from the cafe. Okay. If you're really focused on improving your health, having a plan is going to make making those decisions a whole lot easier. So 4 steps here I'm going to give you for general meal planning. First off, just think ahead um, and write a plan down. First, you just need to figure out what's going on in your life. What events do you have happening throughout the day or in the evenings? Plan around those, and then what meals will appropriately fit your schedule for that week. Okay. Next step is to ideally establish meal times for yourself. Many college students, especially, make poor dietary decisions just because they don't have a plan for when they're going to eat. They end up starving throughout the middle of the afternoon and then eat whatever they can get their hands on when they're finally back in their apartment at night. Um, and so it's best to avoid those problems if you know exactly when you're going to eat your lunch or when you're going to eat your dinner and what you're going to have for those meals. Okay. Then step 3 is to set a budget for yourself. Okay, if you don't make a grocery list or set a budget, you'll likely go overboard at the store and buy more than you actually need. Okay, setting a budget is another way to control that. Maybe take out cash from an ATM and that's what you're limited to spending. Okay, so therefore, you'll not only be buying the foods you've planned, but you'll also financially be in a better state. And then my fourth tip is something that you've probably heard before, but I think is a really great rule of thumb is don't grocery shop hungry. Um, you tend to buy more than you need and less quality items if you shop while you're starving. So have a meal before you go grocery shopping, and you're more likely to buy more quality foods and save your budget, again, which is really important for kids on a low income. Okay. Now, I'm going to pop up a picture here quick. Meal planning doesn't have to look like this. And if you're listening to just an audio right now, think of like the stereotypical bodybuilder Sunday night meal prep where they have, 3 or 4 boxes laid out for every single meal of the day. All their meals are prepped. Okay, they know what they're having for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner every single day of the week, and they're not going to stray from that plan. Okay, this can work for some people, but meal planning doesn't have to look like that. It can be as simple as writing out your planned meals for the week on a piece of paper or in your planner or putting it in your phone just so you have a plan written down. If planning like this works for you and you love it, okay, then great. If you like making all your meals for the week on a Sunday night, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. Awesome. Like, do that. But sometimes, and this is even a problem for me, that all or nothing mindset, like I'm going to go all out or I'm not going to do it at all, can be really extreme for some people. And 2 weeks in, you could eventually stray from that plan and turns into, going back to your old ways for the rest of the years. So I personally like to keep my meals flexible. I usually make a plan and plan out what am I going to have, for 6 to 7 nights of the week. Sometimes I leave one day open knowing that we'll probably eat out at least one night. But then I don't assign those meals to any specific day. When my husband comes home, we just kind of decide from our preset list of meals and what we had grocery shopped for. What do you want to eat tonight? What's going to be quick, or do we have more time? What can we, take some time cooking together and go about it that way? But some sort of plan is better than no plan, is the big point here. Okay. Um, then, like, what kind of items can you look for at the grocery store? How can you eat healthy on a budget? I just have a very simple list here of examples, and this isn't like an exhaustive list. This isn't the only things you should be consuming, but these are some good, healthy examples that if I was a college student and had this list, that I could just take to the grocery store with me, I would feel comfortable grocery shopping for myself and knowing I'm buying good quality foods. Okay. I'm also not going to sit down here and, tell you what specific foods you should or shouldn't eat. By now, you should know what foods have more nutrients and which contain less. You should know that quantity is important, and overconsumption in general is the main cause for health complications and not the consumption of one specific food. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you what foods you should or shouldn't eat. But for those with lower incomes, these are really great nutritious options. You can also get them at places other than grocery stores usually. If you don't have a grocery store near you, these foods are often available at like gas stations or at Walmart or at drugstores even sometimes. So you don't have to live off of fast food as a college student or somebody with a low income. You just have to plan ahead and make smart choices. So I've separated this list out into 4 different categories, those being protein, carbohydrates, fats, and other. So I have a different category for each of our different macronutrients. You should ideally include one of each of these things in every meal, and then just another category, some random things that didn't fit specifically into any one. So good protein sources are going to be things like eggs are wonderful. They're really cheap and they have lots of good quality protein. So eggs, cottage cheese is another great source of protein, relatively inexpensive, Greek yogurt, and deli meats. Okay, deli meats have good protein and again, also pretty inexpensive for the college student. All these foods also keep pretty well in, say, like a small campus dorm refrigerator. They don't take up a whole lot of space and you can keep them for, a couple weeks at a time. Carbohydrate sources, good sources of carbs here are like whole grain bread and pasta. Again, you can keep them in your dorm relatively easy or on a shelf. They last quite a while. Rice has a good shelf life. It's easy to cook on the stove. Popcorn is a great source of carbohydrates. I personally love frozen vegetables. Okay, living on campus, it's hard to buy fresh vegetables for yourself and keep them tasting good and not going bad. So if you can buy frozen vegetables, those will last forever. And then other raw vegetables too, depending on what you like. As a college student, I would always have carrot sticks and celery and hummus in my refrigerator because it was a pretty good healthy snack. And carrots and celery last, for a couple of weeks in the fridge. Good sources of fat you can look to keep are really any type of higher fat dairy product. Okay, a little bit of cream, a little bit of butter here is just fine. You don't want to overdo it on either of those because they are pretty high in calories, but can be good sources of fat and do keep pretty well. Oils like extra virgin olive oil, sunflower oil, avocado oil, different oils have a pretty stable shelf life. Nuts and peanut butter are a great source of fat. I want to point out that peanut butter is not a protein source. Peanut butter is a fat source, so don't consume peanut butter as your primary source of protein. I know people like to try to use peanut butter as their source of protein, and that's not a good answer. Cheese sticks are great, have some fat and they keep pretty well, and then like hummus or other types of healthy dips have a pretty good shelf life or refrigerator life. Easy to keep on campus. And then in my other category, canned soups or sauces, anything canned that you don't have to refrigerate and has a long shelf life, can be great for a college student. So canned vegetables, canned fruits, canned soups, um, all typically pretty nutritious sources as long as you keep an eye out for high sugar content. Some people like to avoid high sodium soups. So if that's your preference, okay, watch out for those. And then like canned sauces, like pasta sauce is a great one to just keep on hand because it's really easy to boil up a pot of noodles and pour some sauce on it. And then finally, other spices and condiments didn't really fit into any category. But the reality is, some of these foods are pretty boring. um, and they can get old really quickly. So if you have a variety of, low calorie spices and condiments that you can mix up and put on any of these foods, really the possibilities are endless when it comes to different types of meals you can compose from these options. Okay. Just a good starting point. Let me know if you have any other suggestions that I could throw into my list. Okay, and so finally, I want to talk about a couple other concepts that are going to be important or additional tips that you can follow when consuming a healthy diet or improving your diet here. First off, try to eat intuitively. Now, intuitive eating is something that's been thrown around a lot frequently. Um, and now, intuitive eating doesn't necessarily mean like, well, I'm craving a donut, so obviously that's what my body wants and needs, so I'm going to eat donuts until I'm satisfied. Okay, that's not what intuitive eating means. Okay, intuitive eating is simply becoming mindful of how food makes you feel. Um, and you'd be surprised, like, I've found that many people just don't think about that a lot. Um, but really, start to think about how food makes you feel. What does being hungry truly feel like to you? Does it feel different than when you're craving something? How many bites does it take to make that kind of ravenous feeling go away? How much food does it take for you to start or to stop feeling hungry or start to feel more satisfied? How long does it take for you to feel satisfied? Are you satisfied at the end of a meal, or do you tend to eat and eat and eat and eat until you're satisfied, and then all of a sudden you feel like stuffed? Um, what did you do that made you feel overfull or stuffed? What does feeling overfull feel like? Is it a good feeling? Is it a bad feeling? So start asking yourself some of those questions. Um, More questions. Were you starving so you ate a piece of bread, but were you still hungry? Um, what did it take for you to not feel hungry anymore? Okay, do any foods make you feel full more quickly than others? This is something that's really important to think about. Do some foods not fill you up at all? What foods make you want to eat more of them? Okay, what foods make you crave more? Usually like Twinkies and Oreos. What foods can you not stop eating once you start eating them? Um, for me personally, I'm very much a like texture person. And I love pretzels, not necessarily because of how they taste, because to be honest, have a pretty boring flavor, but I love crunchy foods. And so once I start eating pretzels, it's really, really hard for me to stop. And so I know that those are foods I generally know I need to limit because I tend to overconsume them. I also do challenge you to think about the way your body responds to food. Um, how does the food that you eat make you feel? Are you constantly bloated? Are you fatigued? Are you tired? Are you sluggish? Are you foggy? Chances are it's because of your diet. When presented with a situation to eat a specific food, what's your motivation for eating or not eating it? Do you fear that eating a donut is going to immediately cause you to gain 5 pounds or clog up your arteries? Or do you think about the fact that you might have a less productive and motivated day because you ate that donut and you'll feel like crap in an hour? Okay, what's your motivation for eating or not eating certain foods? Once you're able to answer those questions for yourself, you're far more likely to make good decisions when it comes to food choices and not risk feeling bad about the choices that you've made. Okay. And then it's really important to just, give yourself some grace when it comes to eating. This is something that you do every single day, and if you're constantly living in fear of it, that's going to cause a lot of problems. So the more forgiving you are, and the more open you are to allowing yourself to enjoy the things you want to enjoy every now and then, the less likely you are to obsess over food or to think about it constantly. If you think about food less often, you're actually less likely to develop extreme cravings or want to binge on any type of food, and the less likely you are to overeat. Um, so just stop thinking about food as good. Stop thinking about food as bad. Stop thinking of food as a reward. Stop thinking of food as a punishment. Okay, food is neither good nor bad. Food is food. All food will provide your body with nourishment in some way. Focus on consuming foods that will benefit your health, but know that consuming less healthful foods, okay, or more bad foods, if that's what you like to call them, can also fit into a balanced diet. Okay, the more you're able to distance yourself from the emotional attachment often associated with food, the more you'll be able to focus on other things and actually live your life. Okay. Just the constant thought of food and that constant anxiety surrounding your meals can be really, really damaging. And so, the less you're able to even think about food in general, and just be happy with the way you eat and be happy with your body, the more you're able to focus on things that really matter. And then finally, another good tip is to just ask yourself why a lot. A lot, okay? If you're struggling with your confidence or ability to make good dietary choices, it's going to be so important to ask yourself why all the time, okay? Why do I feel this way about certain foods? Why can't I stop eating Oreos? Why do I eat until I'm over full? Why do certain foods make me fearful or give me anxiety? Okay, if you're able to go down the why chain long enough, you're likely to find the underlying answer to an issue you've really struggled with. Okay, then you can address that underlying issue rather than beating yourself up over eating a certain way. Okay, so you could even play that game right now with yourself. Um, you know, eating pizza gives me anxiety. Eating pizza makes me feel bad about myself. Well, why? Pizza makes me fat. Why do you think pizza makes you fat? Because pizza has a lot of calories. Yeah, it does. But is pizza the only thing you've eaten today that has calories? Or is it all the other things that you've consumed as well? Just go down that why hole and and ask yourself questions over and over and over until you find some sort of solid answer that you can address. Okay. Finally, just some additional tips. We're almost done here. So I've got a few additional tips before we wrap up. Um, First, tip number one, if there is something that you know you have no self control over when you eat it, it may be best to establish some discipline and just not eat that food. Okay. So for me, like I said, pretzels. Okay. I have no self control over myself when I eat pretzels. Okay. And so because I know I'm more likely to overconsume and lose my mind when I eat out of a bag of pretzels, it's best for me to just have some discipline and avoid that at all costs. Okay. It's also going to improve my relationship with that food. Um, because I'm not going to feel this constant anxiety every time I eat said food. Okay. So discipline is still okay. You may just decide to avoid certain foods altogether if you decide that's best for you. Okay. And so, on that note, discipline is still a good thing. Depending on the person, you may choose to follow a less flexible and more disciplined diet. And this may be necessary if your, say, goals or your sport require it. If you're severely obese and you have no self control over any food, you will have to develop a severely disciplined regimen and diet and food plan for yourself and be very strict with it if you are to lose weight and reach your goals. Okay. Strict discipline can still be good, but remember that being strict is also temporary. Okay. Um, it's hard to be strictly disciplined forever. And so for most people, it may be preferable to find something that's going to be more sustainable rather than more strict. Okay. My third tip here is that food is often thought of as fuel, right? You hear that floating around all the time. Food is fuel. And I just want to say that food is so much more than fuel, okay? Your body is so more impressive and miraculous than a car. Okay. And so food isn't just fuel to supply your body with. Okay. Food is also social and it is emotional and it is cultural and it can be medicinal. Um, and so allow it to be those things for you. Okay. Food can be social and it can bring happiness and joy to family gatherings or meetings with friends. And it's okay for food to be that for you. Food doesn't just have to be the fuel that operates your body. Okay. And then my last tip here, and I mentioned it briefly earlier, but thinking about food. Okay. Thinking about food so much can really be debilitating. Some people think about food all day, whether they realize it or not. And if you're always thinking about food, that's less time you're thinking about things that are more important to you. Okay. Because let's be honest, food isn't the most important thing in your life. It may be something that's getting in the way of other priorities. The more intentional you are about, seems kind of, um, I don't know, paradoxical, but the more intentional you are about thinking about food you eat on the front end, ask yourself why. Intentionally think about food, okay, for the next couple of weeks. The more you do that now, the less you'll end up thinking about food constantly between meals or during every waking minute. Okay, and this is actually a really freeing feeling. Okay, so if you're intentional about your thoughts about food over time, you won't have to think about it at all, and that'll free up a lot of your time to focus on other more important things. Okay, so that's just about going to wrap up everything I have to chat about. I really enjoyed going through this talk with you. I know it ended up being pretty long, so maybe you broke it up into sections for yourself, and that's just fine. But before I go, I am going to list some sources for you on the screen here, so you can reach out to some of these resources to find more information for yourself. Some of these include eatright.org, which is the registered dietitian website. ChooseMyPlate.gov is the MyPlate website. Um, I've got a couple of scientific journals I'll link up here, and then another website called Precision Nutrition, which is one of my favorite nutrition websites. They take a lot of science-based information. Okay, they cite specific research in all of their articles, but their articles are written in a way that are really easy for the general public to understand. Okay, it's not like sitting down and reading peer-reviewed research, but that's what's cited directly in all of their articles. So really good source there. Otherwise, thanks for your time. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in our next chat. Bye.